Dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm very proud to present you our next speaker of our Energy Forum 2021, Mr. Žygimantas Mauricas, who is a traditional speaker at our Energy Forum events since 2012. And Mr. Mauricas is obviously one of the most famous economists and analysts of economic trends and news in this area. Not only in Lithuania, but I would say in the whole Baltic region. And Mr. Mauricas will give us his insights on the trends of electricity prices, energy prices in the whole world, in Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia in particular. What kind of impact does it have, how the economic growth and all other economic factors impact all these processes. So without further ado, dear Žygimantas Mauricas, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure for me to participate again after some break, actually, which happened also due to very intense period due to the crisis. And one of the first victims of any crisis are economists, actually, because everyone is asking questions and not too many answers economists usually have, especially at the beginning of the crisis, because each crisis is very different. But in this regard, I'm pretty happy because I was among those that were not overly pessimistic, and I proved to be right. And one of my key forecasts that went really well is that this time, contrary to other crises, real estate market actually didn't collapse. And the second was that the recovery was extremely fast. So we had a very specific crisis. We had a very short, followed by very rapid economic recovery. And the third thing, which I was also right, is that there is increased divergence between developed economies and emerging economies. So basically in developed economies, including Lithuania, we don't see this crisis. Whereas in emerging economies, they still mood is not that good, and the key reason why this crisis is specific, and it also has repercussions and effect on the energy market globally and regionally, is because if you take OECD countries, then we had record years last year. So one record was that we had we witnessed record GDP drop, record high, but at the same time we witnessed record high increase in household income. So that's a very specific crisis. Yeah, basically you have GDP drop, but at the same time income increases. And why it increases? Because governments actually were spending money like crazy. Especially in USA, they were even sending some checks with money to people. They were spending generous unemployment benefits, and they had kept increase in wages, pensions, etc. So all social expenditures were rising very fast, and therefore the gap is very big now. So basically, our GDP is still below pre-crisis level. If you take all OECD countries, okay, some already above, including Lithuania, but household income is well above. So as a result, as soon as situation normalizes, and especially this is very true during the summer periods in Northern Hemisphere, in European Union, Northern America, pandemic situation eases. So basically, these people start spending this money. And then you have this roller coaster, American roller coaster. So you have very huge jump in demand in all types of goods, and especially those like tangible goods, like do-it-yourself called segment. But also you have a pretty strong demand increase for energy products, for oil, because people start traveling, for gas, because manufacturing companies are really busy producing these goods. Also any commodities that are used, especially for construction, because construction sector, as I mentioned, it's specific that it didn't experience recession, and real estate prices are growing very fast. So you have a pretty strange situation that statistically you still see kind of GDP below pre-crisis levels, whereas consumption is usually above pre-crisis levels. And this, of course, increases demand for many products, including energy products. And this will not end very soon. This is very important because, as I say, pandemics come and go, but the economic stimulus stays. Yeah? We have the European Union Recovery Fund, money of which it just started actually flowing into our economies. So it's just the beginning, and it's not a recovery anymore. It's like a transformation, I would call it, because recovery, we already recovered in the Baltic states. So what we will use this money for is transformation, and so to a large extent, transformation in which sector? In energy sector. This is a very strange crisis, also in a sense that usually during the crisis you witnessed a drop in investment activity, but during this crisis, okay, you had a very short temporary drop, but in this crisis probably you will see a boom in investment activities, and all this money is actually flowing to Baltic states. And then very interesting thing is that if there were no crisis like this, probably we wouldn't have such a huge capacity to invest in general, and especially in energy, because a big part of this EU Recovery Fund is actually devoted for energy transformation. So this crisis actually is very specific because instead of depressing, it boosted prices, and but then it gave tool to fight with increase with those prices. And now Baltic states are in a very interesting position because actually we have no choice. That's very important, because it's like this climate change. Now it's on the top of the agenda, and especially European Union is leading the way globally in this respect. Yeah. So basically, they have plans net zero by 2050, pretty ambitious plans by 2030. I am not very optimistic in kind of if I look at the historical developments, I'm not very optimistic whether they will achieve these objectives. They might move pretty close to them, but probably there will be some lag. But what they will achieve, most likely, is that they will dampen supply of oil and gas in developed economies. In US, you know this Keystone, for example, project that has been frozen. Yeah, UK, Netherlands, even Norway. Okay, Norway maybe not so much, but still, I mean, there's really big pressure on not to invest in oil and gas fields, new fields in developed economies. So it's like symbolic that we close Keystone pipeline from Canada to US, which would also increase global supply of gas and oil. And then at the same time, actually 2 months afterwards, we actually announced opening of Nord Stream 2 project, from emerging, let's say, economy to develop. So basically, we increase our dependence of oil and gas imports from emerging economies. And as a result, what we have now in the European Union, prices are growing very fast. Okay, maybe there is some geopolitical thing in it because Russia is reluctant to increase supply to Ukraine, Belarus, and Poland. So they are waiting probably for this Nord Stream. But this is just kind of beginning of a long cycle, in my view. So for Baltic states, it's very, very important to jump into this train of renewable energy. Otherwise, we might kind of be left behind and face increasing dependence on unstable and increasingly, in my opinion, expensive supply of oil and gas, so basically these like fuels that are not renewable. So we have no choice, but our starting position is worse compared to other developed countries, especially Scandinavian countries, because they have more still financial resources, let's say, and especially talking about demand. I mean, transport sector, let's say, yeah, like Norway is already, yeah, several years in a row, but the purchase of electric vehicles is surpassing those of combustible engine. Like Sweden, Finland, Denmark is also moving quite fast, and Baltic states, they're lagging behind. Yeah, this is, we have to admit that. This will not be easy for us, but we have no choice. At least I see it. I already mentioned it, I think 7 years ago in a conference where I marked this tectonic shift between the green European Union, or which aspired to become green at that time, maybe because it's so green, and then the kind of still like black East, which depends on oil and gas. And then we are this tectonic shift, and then we have basically no choice. My conclusion was that to jump on this train, and the only way is to increase, of course, connectivity, so that not to repeat like Spain. For example, Spain is suffering now because they don't have good connections with France. They have nuclear, and then of course have good connections with Germany, etc. So we cannot import enough electricity. Electricity prices spike very much because it's very much depend on gas prices, which increased a lot. So they are kind of like energy island, and Baltic states also still are energy island, but we are very close of getting rid of this energy island kind of thing. So this is one important thing, and the other, of course, is important is to increase local generation, energy generation, because as I mentioned, this like future of oil and gas prices is completely unpredictable. So one thing that could harm our economies if we remain dependent is uncertainty, volatility. The second thing is a higher price level, because if you will cut supply in developed economies, and also companies that are based in developed economies, they cut supply in emerging economies, so then we will be increasingly dependent on unstable emerging economies like Russia, Middle East. So this I think is the most kind of crucial long-term tendency, which we don't have like luxury to ignore. So we have basically no choice, or very little choice.
So in fact, in the current energy market and energy environment, what do you see for the European Union? What is the future? I mean, obviously, European Union was and still is investing a lot into the Green Deal and green transformation. China, on the other hand, is still, totally dependent on coal and partially now increasing gas. Russia is their traditional gas and oil supplier. Americans were struggling with their oil shale capacities during the time of 2020 when oil prices were essentially negative for a while and then dropped a lot. So what will you see for European Union? What is your kind of prediction for the future?
It's kind of a risky strategy for European Union, because I already told it, I mentioned 6 years ago, because they put quite a few eggs, if not all eggs, into one basket. Like in finance guys, we tell that we shouldn't do that because they put a lot of eggs into this like green energy.
I even heard very interesting stories, for example, in Germany, where nuclear power is being totally phased out. And since the industry and production demands electricity, Germany is essentially investing into coal plants from time to time, and increasing usage of Russian gas through Nord Stream 2. So this is actually a contrary tendency to the declared Green Deal or increase of renewables.
Yes, I mean, in the interim period, which might be quite long, as I mentioned. European Union will increase its dependence on import, especially of gas, from like emerging and not very stable economies. So this is the biggest danger for European Union, and to reduce this danger, the only viable option for it is to move faster with this transition. And this is, of course, a gamble, and they will probably lose a lot in terms of international competitiveness. So I would say carbon border tax will be almost a must. So that's still a very big uncertainty how other partners will react to it, and whether European Union will really manage to implement it, and how broad it will be. But without these tools, the European Union really risks losing competitiveness, increasing energy sector instability, and also risks having overly ambitious goals, which to some extent can be reminiscent to Dieselgate scandal, which we had. No, because usually in European Union it's going top down. So bureaucrats decide targets, and then they're being pushed down to businesses, to households, which not always work as intended, as Dieselgate scandal showed. So in theory, yes, the cars got greener and greener, but in reality, we just found out that it was not exactly the case. Okay, we got, but the progress was much lower. And what actually changed this is the United States to a large extent, Tesla, to be more precise, because they kind of pushed this electric vehicle revolution, and then European Union got this tool, technological tool. So technologies actually are the key in this transformation. So you need technologies to make this transformation. Otherwise, the strategy, in my opinion, really is quite risky, because in US it's fine for them. It's easier because they are basically self-sufficient, and they have mostly internal fights within, like among different US states. Actually, okay, we have some legal issues, etc. So it's not that easy as it might look from outside, but actually, at least it's like inside the United States, and depending on situation, depending on market, they can have more flexibility in my view. Whereas the European Union have less flexibility because they are so much dependent on import of gas and oil, actually, from emerging, and this dependency will increase in the future, especially if the United States will also cut or limit supply growth of this energy resources. And for us to play this game, it's very dangerous, actually, for Baltic states, because, and that's why probably the only viable option longer term, medium term, is to actually go towards greener energy, and also, of course, have as many alternatives, so be as much interconnected as possible. So we have LNG terminal, we can say a gas connection with Poland. We will integrate our electricity market, and since once these projects will be completed, then we will no longer be energy island, and then we will kind of, our small ship, small boat, will move along these waves in the big ocean, and then we will not feel these externalities so much. So that's probably the key strategy going forward. Of course, the other risk, I mean, it's not easy to tell, because if you have so much money flowing in and you have pretty limited time period, then there can be some inefficiencies actually in this process as well. So let's see how it will.
And coming back to maybe more traditional energy sources, the same oil and gas, I recently read a study about connection between the, let's say, economic development, social development, and energy sources. And the study's idea essentially was that every newly found energy source does not actually replace the previous energy source, but comes in addition to the energy source that was used before. So essentially, if we look at coal, for example, that was the, I would say, almost only energy source 100 years ago. It is, in absolute figures, it's being consumed as much today as it was then. Only additional energy sources like oil, gas, renewables, nuclear energy added themselves on top of that. So my question would be, now we see this radical increase in gas prices, oil prices. What is your prediction about these energy sources? Will the prices keep increasing? Will we find parity somewhere? What is your kind of take on?
Yeah, you will need some creative destruction, like technological destruction, like Schumpeterian, to basically end this as a stone age. Stone age ended not because of the lack of stones, but because other technologies proved to be more efficient and more, not all, I mean, efficient, yeah, because stones are cheap. I mean, you can find everywhere. So it's just, out fashioned or yeah, it's like more productive. And then you need to change really the attitude, probably one thing, and whether you need to really invest in technology. So this is the most important, because European Union will not save global the whole world. And will not affect too much global warming. This needs to be also acknowledged, because European Union now emits less than 10% of all emissions, and it's falling year by year, this percentage. And then you have emerging markets, Africa, Asia, and China, which are still increasing those emissions. So basically, we are becoming not that relevant ourselves, but our relevance is can be very huge if we manage to create technologies in the European Union that could be used by other countries, and they, instead of investing in new coal or oil sources, they can basically invest in renewable sources. So this is, I think, the key. And talking about the gas and oil market, as I mentioned, the biggest probably change is that, or the danger, I would even say, is that supply will be cut faster than demand in developed economies, because the pressure is easier to make on supply. So you can even,
all the environmental, social, governance requirements, nobody wants to invest into oil and gas. It's kind of a, pariah sector, I would say, financially especially.
Yes. Exactly, and even financial markets are now starting to actually jump into it with all these ECG, etc. standards, and then you would be like, as you mentioned, it's like very very unpopular to do this, and then there will be, as a result, increased dependence on imports from unstable countries. So as a result, what you will have increased volatility, increasing price volatility, and most likely increased price level, especially for gas, because for gas demand is very strong. But it's also a tricky thing. I'm not very much. Just some philosophical question. I mean, gas usually is a byproduct of oil, of the extraction of oil. So if you increase consumption of gas and at the same time you decrease consumption of oil, so how it will balance? I'm not sure. I mean, so there's some strange ideas. Okay, gas is not only gas from oil. Of course, you can take gas from.
Obviously, oil is not only an energy source today. Almost everything is actually produced today from oil. For example, plastics. Plastics are impossible without oil. So oil consumption will definitely not disappear. It will maybe transform itself, but especially in the short term, my opinion is concurrent with yours, that prices will have to increase because of simple demand supply requirements. More demand, less supply. So we might see a huge actual increase in oil prices in coming years, I would say. Even during the last year, the gas price probably even doubled in absolute figures. So actually, also, continuing on your idea that European Union's importance in the energy, let's say, consumption of the world is decreasing. That is certainly true. But for example, in India, the move to cleaner energy means move from actually coal and oil to LPG. Or especially in home cooking and other projects which is actually not a real move, because LPG is produced from oil, so it's essentially just a different form of oil. So in fact I fully agree that the tendencies are let's say so mixed. Some regions are very much going forward or trying to go forward, the others are lagging behind, but the real consumers are actually not changing that fast.
Yeah, but it's also opportunity for renewable energy players, because the higher you have the oil and gas prices, the more incentives you have to invest, and probably we will witness a boom in renewable investments, not only in the European Union, not only because we have these very ambitious plans and lots of money flowing into, but let's hope that also in emerging economies there will be a shift towards renewables.
What is your opinion about the LNG market? That LNG has been probably the savior of the Baltic gas markets from Russian dependence. And obviously the region is building a lot of LNG terminals. Poland built several LNG terminals. Lithuania is actually expanding its LNG terminal, acquiring the ownership of the ship, FSRU ship. Lithuania has become essentially a distribution center for LNG, getting the big shipments in and then redistributing them to smaller ports and smaller vessels. What's your kind of opinion how that area will develop?
I mean, we witness a decoupling of LNG and oil prices after the 2008-2009 crisis, because oil prices jumped, but LNG prices didn't. So it was a very good period for countries to invest in this infrastructure and get pretty reasonable prices, and also increase diversification. And now we have a recoupling, that's I would say, because LNG prices are growing faster. And if you look at what are plans for the future and what the International Energy Agency is forecasting, then most likely it will be recoupling, but to the other side. So LNG probably might have a higher price growth potential than oil. It's like supply demand, simple thing in economics. When demand increases faster than supply, then you have price increases. So I think this will turn, the tables will turn. So LNG will not be as attractive as before. So also it's kind of to some extent warning sign for Lithuania as well, Baltic states, and that we will need to continue to diversify our energy portfolio as much as we can.
Well, obviously, in our countries, the energy production from renewable sources is rather considerable. I would say it's almost the only source of energy production at the moment. But worldwide, obviously, renewables make up maybe 10, at the best 15% of the world production. What's your kind of opinion? How that will change in the coming 5 years, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
There will be no big change because these things will not happen very fast, unfortunately, in energy market. I mean, you rightly noted that even coal consumption is still higher than 100 to 200 years ago. And basically what renewables are achieving at best now globally that they actually kind of cover all the growth in energy consumption. So it allows other energy sources to stay as they were like 10 years ago. And the growth is basically happening from investment in renewables. So this is a positive development, but I would say these changes will need to take more time. I would say 2040, 50, maybe even later, because energy demand is rising constantly, and it depends, of course, on economic development also. Now emerging economies actually doing pretty bad, and even with this, we will probably hit next year our global oil consumption will be higher than 2019, so higher than pre-crisis level. But emerging markets are still in a pretty bad shape. But if all this economic stimulus, and what IMF, for example, is repeatedly saying that we need to invest a lot in these emerging economies, and most of this investment is not contrary to European Union. It's not investments into greener energy. It's just general, I mean, economic stimulus. And then if emerging economies would start growing very fast, then we would be racing, like, you know, this mouse racing in this circle, so running fast but still not moving forward. So there will be pretty big challenges and increasing pressure on developed economies, especially within developed economies, to show example for the rest of the world, to invest in technologies, to shift to renewables. And since demand will probably rise, as we have discussed, so oil and gas prices will grow, they will become more stable, and as a result, this would be a pretty good strategy for Baltic states not to kind of be on the wrong side of the equation. I mean, we need to be together with these countries, even though they are also taking risks, because I mentioned they are putting probably too many eggs into one basket, but they believe that this basket may eventually pay off, because in this way we would limit global warming. So this is like a higher aim.
What is your opinion of the actual utilization of hydrogen? You know, it has been a big, topic that actually hydrogen is the savior technology, that it will essentially have the only byproduct as water vapor. But then there are new, informations coming out that actually to produce the hydrogen you need a lot of traditional energy, which in the end is almost negative balance, of the energy mix. So what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, this is the potential energy source, but it's has been potential for probably 50 years or even more. So and I think there is a pretty decent chance that it will become potential, at least for some 10, 20, 30 years. And the reason is that you have mentioned, it's very correct one. It's because it's very expensive to produce. So you need to achieve a surplus energy supply from renewables in order to move to hydrogen, which is not the case in many even developed countries, not talking about other countries. I mean, to produce hydrogen from what? From oil, from gas, from coal, even from nuclear, I would say it's a pretty strange strategy would be. So basically, this probably would be initially like a niche segment, and mostly could be produced in times where prices are extremely low, like you have lots of wind, lots of solar, and then like it's kind of a luxury thing to have, So it's like pollution free, but it's expensive. So it's like buying a luxury car like a Tesla. Not too many people can buy Tesla. Many wish to buy, but not too many can buy. So probably Norway. Such countries like Norway, there is higher potential, but needs to take some time for it to become more economical. I saw some discussions in UK, maybe there are some subsidy schemes, etc. Considered, but there is also can be some like controversies with it, whether we should spend so much on specifically this type of technology. You know, like Spain, for example, is now complaining about the overall increase in prices for houses. So they will probably not like dive into hydrogen for sure. Spain, I mean, if you asked whether you are considering, probably would say no. But for other countries, yeah, maybe yes. So let's hope. I mean, there are many technological things where we don't probably know what's happening, how it will evolve. There are different opinions. So yeah, I think it's potential, but we still need some time for it to become mass product.
So your prediction is, in that sense, very traditional in a way, that traditional energy sources will retain their importance. Maybe they will not increase in absolute number of consumptions and capacities, but essentially they will certainly not disappear, not in the coming 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And hopefully the renewable sources that are being developed will compensate or fill the gap of the new energy needs that the economies all around the world create. So that is probably a fact that most of the people do not understand, not only in the political sector but also otherwise. You know, so this is an important let's say point to make. But with this, I would probably like to thank you for this very interesting interview and discussion. And I will check whether we will have some questions online. No, at the moment we have no questions online. So with that, thank you very much, Žygimantai, and we will see each other in future events. And I hope you will follow our project and be our good friend and speaker in the future as well.
So thank you very much for the invitation. Yeah, and keep investing. Don't lag behind. Yeah, I mean, for small fish, you know, the best strategy is to swim close to bigger fish, you know. So that's the strategy we should pursue. We shouldn't be perceived as some outlier, you know. So that's probably the safest we can get.
Follow the market leader, yes.
yes, follow the market. Yeah.
Okay.
If you cannot beat them, you know, join them. So that's the strategy.
Exactly. Thank you very much once more, and have a great day. Thank you for your insights.